Hello, all my fine aviation enthusiast friends. Welcome back to the Airplane Show. I'm going to be your pilot and your captain today. My name is Greg. You're going to come along on this journey with me from Phoenix, Arizona to somewhere near Los Angeles. I don't really know how to pronounce it. It's Van Nuys, I think. But anyways, we're going to be flying the LearJet45 today, and today I'm going to be talking pretty much the whole time and really doing a full tutorial on the whole flight. So now we are going to choose Cold and Dark from the only position available at the Phoenix Deer Valley Airport, and then let's choose the time that this flight actually took place, which I'll show you in a moment. But it took place at, what the hell time did it take place? It was like 2:30 in the afternoon. So we're setting that. And now we're going to calibrate, because I don't like using the analog stick. And let's take a look at the actual flight today from FlightAware. Alright, here's the flight. It was actually 3:30 local time. Well, that's the correct time I put in anyways. But here's the flight from Phoenix to Van Nuys. And so that's what will be built today. Here is the waypoints and the SID and the star they use. Now, those are not available in Aerofly. Once again, the standard instrument departure and the standard terminal arrival are not available, so I built the route as close as I could using many of the same waypoints that are available. A lot of the waypoints you're looking at right now are associated with the SID and the star, but I did build this route almost exactly how it is in real life. If you haven't already, please leave a comment. Please leave a like, click that thumbs up. Please click the subscribe button and share this video. Now you know it, say it with me. Let's get rolling and let's get going. Alright, so on the yoke here, that little red button right there, we're going to use that at the very end of the flight. You can use it whenever you want, but that will disengage the autopilot, so you do not have to do it on the autopilot stack. And then also with this steering column, if you tap right in the center of it, it will raise it and lower it if you need to. So right now we're going to push the external power button, which is the one with the green lettering. Push both the left and right battery buttons. Push the emergency battery button, and then push both left and right avionics. Alright, that little square clock there, right now it's UTC time. If you push the select button, it brings you to local time. Push the select button one more time, and that will bring you to the stopwatch feature, so you can time procedure turns if you need to, or anything of that nature. To get it to actually start counting, you need to push the black button, then push the select button again, and then push the black button again, and that will start the timer for you. And then pushing the select button again will cycle you through the 3 different modes that are available with this particular clock. On the pilot and co-pilot side, there are the same 4 lighting switches. These are really the only lighting switches for the interior. The CB panel is for the circuit breaker panel. There's one for floodlights. There's one for instrumentation. And then there's another light for, like the buttons and everything. So I always turn them way up. But right now I'm going to go over to the co-pilot side and do the same thing over here as well. The 2 little stacks of buttons beneath the flight management system, there's really no use for it. One little column is for the weather radar, the other is for the emergency locator transmitter, and then pitch and trim and rudder. But I've never ever used any of them. I'm just turning the knob just to show you can do it. Anyways, let's enter into the FMS, push the bottom left button, accept, push flight plan, and now let's enter the first of our bits of information, which is our airport. Now let's type in our first waypoint, which is Zephyr. So just type it in and push enter. And now we're going to push MUMTE for our next waypoint. And then you just keep on going through this process. You have to enter all your waypoints before you enter your destination airport. I don't think all these are going to go in, but we will see what happens. All right, so EED, and then let's see here, Basel, BASAL. Let's push enter, and oh, good, with that one entered. And now Kople, KOPLE. All right, KOPLE. Push enter, and nothing. Okay, so push the button next to Kople. Highlight it, then go up to the top right, push the top right button, which is delete. You need to push that twice, and that will delete that particular line. So what we have to do now is go back to the main menu, push the navigation button there, and now we're just going to type in the rest of our route. First, we're going to choose our destination airport now. This is what KVNY, and then we're going to go to runway 16 right and do the ILS for that particular flight route. And now we just need to type in the rest of our waypoints, and then we will be all set to go back into the plane to finish setting everything up for takeoff. Alright, now we need to connect our route, so push the button next to no link, and then that'll bring up, it'll highlight in white, go up to the top right, push delete twice, and that will delete no link. And now our route is completely connected, which I'll show you. Let's go back to the main menu and check out our route, and you will see it is now completely connected. Well, it does have the wrong runway. We need to fix that, because we're taking off from, I believe it's 25 left that we're taking off from today. But now if you were to look at this route compared to what FlightAware had, it's almost identical, almost all the same waypoints that I put in that were available. Alright, so let's now fire up the rest of the airplane. So push the summary button here. I want to show you something. You can go through the electrical system, hydraulics, the cabin pressure, the ailerons, the rudder, the pitch, all that, and the fuel, which is something that sucks in this plane. It sucks really bad. Push MFD here, push speeds, and now you can adjust the V1, VR, and V2 speeds yourself. Just push the button, put the little box around it, push the knob and turn it. And as you can see, it now changes on our display there. Let me show you again. Let me switch this back to 112 where it was before. And now you can see it is 112. So if you want to continue to switch those, go ahead, just push the boxes that correspond to it. And then to go back, just push return, and that'll bring you back to that screen there. The Copilot FMS, I usually leave on performance. You can leave it on whatever you want. That's the PERF button, which is on the bottom row right next to the flight plan button. All right, let's enter the first frequency, EED, which is 115.2. The buttons in that display there, the second from the top right, push that. That little yellow box shows up. The outer green circle does the first 3 digits. The inner green circle does the 2 digits after the decimal point. Then once you have the frequency, the button on the very top right will flip-flop those frequencies for you and make the one we just put in active. As you can see, it just flipped. And then if you want to put in another one, you can certainly do that, but that's the one we need right now. Let's fire up engine number 2. Push the right ignition button, then push the right start button. In our engine display there, when those numbers get up to 15, the ones that are creeping up, tap on the right throttle, and then after you tap on it, immediately drag it forward. So you're going to tap and then touch again and then drag it forward and then put it into the idle position. Once that engine is fired up, we're going to repeat the same process for the first engine. All right, let's turn on some outside lights so people know what we're doing to the plane. Flip the nav button up. Let's put the seatbelt signs on. Let's arm the emergency lights. Just move that toggle switch to the middle. That'll arm them. And now let's fire up the first engine. Left ignition button on. Left start button. Push it in. And now we need to wait for those numbers again to creep up to around 15. Tap and then drag. Tap it and then drag it forward. Put it in idle, and now both engines are getting ready to start screaming. 34,000 feet in the air. The emergency battery will shut off automatically now that both engines are fired up. I did not touch that button. That shuts off automatically when both engines are up and running the way they should be. Now let's push the right and left ignition buttons to turn them off. And let's push the external power button to turn it off. And that will kick on both generators automatically. Alright, anti-ice, let's push all 4 of those buttons in that are off. And then under gear and hydraulics, the top black button, push that in. That activates the nose wheel steering. So we can turn the aircraft while we're taxiing, flip the beacon light up into the middle, and then also the 2 landing toggle switches, move them into the middle position for the taxi lights. Activate the rudder boost. It's that black button right there in the center that is off. Just push it in and that will turn it on. I want the map to be in front of me, so that white knob in the center. Tap it and then swipe up, and that will put the map into that display right there. That black knob on the bottom right, tap it and then move the circle right or left, and that will zoom in or out. The stack of buttons to the right of the white knob there, the 2 buttons on the bottom of either side, the B, R, G buttons, those dials there, when you move them, it will adjust the heading display inside the rose arc there. Right now it says nav 1 and nav 2, but if you were to turn them, it will switch to whatever you choose. The button in the very center, if you push that, the 2 green circles will show up. The outer circle, turn it right or left, that will adjust the brightness of the altitude indicator display. The inner circle, if you turn that, that will adjust the brightness of the map. And then the buttons on the very top, push nav, and instead of FMS1 showing up in that display there, it'll show a VOR or an ILS. FMS will bring up your planned route. HSI will switch the rose arc and put it into an arc like the map. The rose compass. It'll change the rose compass into an arc. The WX weather button doesn't really do anything. The FPA button will show your flight path right in the altitude indicator display. The Q button will take, when you have the FMS active in the autopilot, it will bring up a pink triangle. If you push the Q button, it'll take the pink triangle and turn it into a pink cross to show, what angle of attack your airplane should be. And then the IN/HPA button will take the barometric pressure and switch it from inches into hectopascals. If you have any questions on any of it, please let me know. You're going to see me pushing those buttons a little bit during the flight. But for now, that's just a pretty good rundown of what each one of those buttons does. Alright, let's set our cruising altitude on the autopilot stack there. We're going to push the altitude knob and then turn it until we get to the cruising altitude we are going to cruise today. Time to activate the FMS route. Push the nav button on the autopilot stack, and that will bring up the pink triangle and also show you FMS and altitude select, and roll and go around in our display there. Let's set our flaps for takeoff. You can either push the flap button on the screen or just move it down yourself like I did. Well, I moved it down a little too much. Let me use the button to put it where it needs to go. Let me adjust the heading displays that show up in the rose compass on the co-pilot side. Alright, so let me see what we're heading towards. So after we take off and we make our first left turn, let's set that heading. So when we push autopilot, hopefully it'll be pretty close to what we actually are pointed towards. So we're selecting the correct heading right now and push that big red and black stick in to release the parking brake so we can get rolling and take off. So let's now taxi out to the runway. Let's turn on the rest of the outside lights, turn the strobe lights on, flip that switch up in the air, and then flip the 2 landing light switches up as well, and that will now turn on all the lights we need for our takeoff. Time for takeoff power. Let's put the landing gear to sleep. Time to retract our slats and flaps. Alright, let's push the AP button to turn on the autopilot and push the speed button as well. Push the speed knob and then turn it. I'm turning it so it says 250 knots, and that will be our speed that we're going to climb up to 10,000 feet. Now that other button that lit up is the yaw dampener button. That activated automatically when I pushed the autopilot button. So now we are all set for our climb to 10,000 feet. And then at 10,000 feet we will adjust the speed again. But yeah, now you're all ready to just sit back and just enjoy the sounds and sights of the LearJet45. If you would like to adjust the brightness of the two displays, as I mentioned earlier, just push that little black button in there. The inner dial does the right display, the outer dial does the left display, and that's really all that button does. Alright, let's turn both landing lights off. So take both landing switches and move them down all the way. And then I'm kind of curious how much fuel we've used so far. Probably a lot, knowing this plane. This plane is absolutely terrible with fuel. Oh, look at that. We've used almost half of our fuel already. Well, no worries. I'm going to show you a little trick to fix that in a little bit here. Alright, let's set our speed to 300, push the speed knob again, rotate it till it says 300, and that will be pretty much the speed we use for the rest of our climb to our cruising altitude today. Let's do the refuel mid-flight now. We're on 875 kilograms on board. That's we've used about half of our fuel so far. So what we're going to do is we are going to go back to the main screen. and then we are going to go into location, and now we are going to go ahead and just move our airplane to wherever we want. So I'm going to move it kind of close to the top of the descent, and then I'm going to move the altitude up to 34,000 feet. Then when we jump back into the airplane, we will be at this location that we're going to move to, and our altitude will be at 34,000 feet roughly. The only downfall to doing this is you have to reset everything in the airplane. You have to turn the autopilot back on. Any frequencies that were programmed, you have to do that again. So you have to kind of reset the whole airplane. But right now we're going to move the airplane and then reset the altitude to 34,000 feet. And then we'll jump back in the plane and take it from there. Let me set the correct time for our landing. So this flight landed 3:30 local time, which UTC time should be right about there. That's about a half an hour to descent and land. So now let's go back into the airplane push pause. We're going to go up to the autopilot stack, unpause it, push autopilot, and then reset our airplane with everything we need to that we had set before. Okay, let's plug in our ILS and VOR information. So push the button again next to the blue nav1 numbers. So push that little rectangle button in, and then we're going to go ahead and push the dial. Remember, the inner circle does the digits after the decimal point. The outer circle does the first three digits. So first I'm going to put in the PMD VOR. That's going to be where we're going to head to first. The blue line now is going to have our the ILS frequency, which is 111.3. So again, the inner dial does the last two digits, the outer dial does the first two digits, and now that is all set for when we need to switch to our ILS frequency. It'll be ready and active. Now I'm going to go over to nav2 and program the VNY VOR, which is the VOR for the airport. There's no real reason to do this, but I like to push buttons and turn dials and see stuff on the maps and stuff, so I'm going to put it in there anyways. And then I'm going to push the, when we get closer, I'll push the button to switch that over as well. And then I'm going to set the communication frequencies too, even though there's really no reason. It doesn't do anything, but if you want to do that, push the button on the left next to the blue numbers, and then just operate the dial as you did before. And then once you have the numbers set, then push the top button on both sides. The top button is what switches the frequency from blue to yellow. So I just pushed it and you saw how it went from blue to yellow. And now I'm going to put in the tower frequency. So the tower for this particular runway and airport is 119.30. So we're going to do that. But that's pretty much how you operate these nav and communication system in the LearJet. So let me adjust the rose compass. I'm going to move the one heading bug to FMS. That way I have one heading bug for the ILS and one for our route. Let's check our fuel. Remember, push the system button, then push the fuel button. And look at that. Now that we reset our plane somewhere on the map, Now our fuel has gone back up and we refilled our airplane mid-flight. That's the only way I know how to get around refueling the plane mid-flight. If you have another way of doing it, please let me know in the comments below. The intercept altitude for the ILS is supposed to be 3,800 feet. Let's push our altitude knob and scroll down to put in the correct altitude that we're going to descend to. I usually do 500 feet below the ILS, so that's what I'm doing now. And then also on the autopilot stack, push the VNAV button. Now VNAV shows up in our altitude indicator display in white, and when we get to the right part of our flight plan, the LearJet45 will descend automatically for you. And at that point, you just need to control your speed. Being a simulator, let's simulate the co-pilot side. I'm going to move both of the rose compass heading buds, one for FMS again and the other for VOR2, because we have VOR2 programmed as VNY right now. So now that we switched it, we also need to push the nav button up on the top row there. That now says VOR2, and move your course knob, which I'm doing right now, to I believe it's 164 is the intercept course for the VNY VOR at the airport where we are landing. But very important is the switch from FMS to nav, and that's done with those square buttons up above the heading, right above that circle right now is the nav button. Make sure you push that in so VOR2 shows up on the co-pilot screen there. All right, so as we are continuing our flight here, I do believe the VNAV is getting ready to capture. There we go. So now on our altitude indicator display, VTA is flashing. The little triangle on the right is moving closer to the center, and when it centers up, VNAV should turn green and we should begin our descent to the airport. So here is the actual approach that the plane took from EED all the way to the ILS. I could not choose this particular approach because the developers at Aerofly decided to not make this part of the simulator. However, I was able to put a lot of the same waypoints in. Basel, Koppel, PMD, Janney, Puck, Eiffel. I was able to put a lot of the same ones in. However, it took a little while to find them all on the map, but we did it. Let's get all the passengers back in their seat by flipping the seatbelt sign all the way up again. The runway elevation is about 802 feet, so push that dial right there, and LA stands for landing altitude, and I'm just going to dial in 800 because that's pretty close. It means absolutely nothing in the simulator, but it's just one more thing to touch and turn and see, so that's why I'm doing it. Let me move the speed bug up to 250 so I can visually have an indicator on the altitude indicator display. Doing this does absolutely nothing for the flight at this time. It's just going to move that pink little slide thing up on the left close to 250 so I can just look down and not look at numbers. I can just look at the pink thing and gauge what speed I should be at. The FMS in this plane, along with the 737 and Q400, does not tell you what flight level you're going to be at for each waypoint. However, I do know I need to be around 14,000 feet for Koppel, so I'm taking things into my own hands now, and I just push the VS button. When you push the VS button and you are now descending through that mode, you need to use the speed knob to adjust the angle of attack. You know, the descent rate or the ascent rate if you're using VS to climb. So that's what I did. From now until I capture the glide scope, anytime you see me push the speed knob, it is to adjust my descent rate. Alright, let's switch into heading mode, and then the square buttons up on the top. Let's push nav, so the altitude indicator display says VOR1 instead of FMS. And then also let's go down to the VOR frequencies and switch to the ILS frequency by pushing the top right button, and push the course knob now and dial in the correct course for the ILS, which is 164 for this particular runway in this particular airport. So now we are all set. The nav frequency is in right now. The 111.30 is in yellow. We have the correct course in. The altitude indicator display says VOR has the correct course, and then when we get closer to the ILS will show up, the name of the ILS, and yeah, man, we're rolling. We're going to see if we can make this touchdown today. You know, if you see my videos, you know how much I love making them touchdowns. Under 10,000 feet, let's activate landing lights by moving the toggle switches for both left and right all the way up. All right, let's push the altitude button so we can stay at our current altitude. This next waypoint and the one after that, we need to be at a flight level of 8,000 feet. So we are currently about 8,000 feet, so that's why I leveled off right now. And then after we pass the next couple of waypoints, we will start our descent again. Since there is no auto throttle on the Learjet, or at least this particular model, please make sure you adjust the throttle as necessary to keep your speed where it needs to be. Hey IPACs, hey Aerofly devs, look at this bullshit. In the 130 miles we've traveled, barely giving it any throttle at all, we've used over half of the fuel from when we refilled mid-flight. We've used like 800 to 900 kilograms. That is absolutely nuts. If you look at the rose compass of our plane now, you will notice there is a green line all the way up at the top. That now means that our airplane has recognized the frequency we put in and is reading how far away we are and what direction we are traveling versus the ILS. So right now, we're going to keep heading on our flight plan, and when those green lines all connect, we are in line with the correct course that we need to travel in order to land this bird. Alright, we are close enough now where I feel comfortable pushing the approach button to arm the localizer. So on our autopilot stack, push the APP button like I just did. Now on our altitude indicator display in white, you see GS for glide scope, LOC is in white for localizer, and then in green it says Cat 2. The Category 2 is the type of ILS landing this plane does. A Category 3 is where the plane will roll out and flare on its own. A Category 2 does not do that. On our altitude indicator display, if you notice on the right side of it now, you will see a green triangle. That green triangle is the plane versus the ILS capture point for the glide scope. So right now, the capture point for the glide scope is above us. We need to work on getting that triangle right in the center, and that will usually happen as you get closer to the airport. But long as we maintain just a slow rate of descent and keep an eye on that, it should be brought into focus. The localizer is now captured, which means we don't need to do anything else now at this point to line the plane up for the runway. You just focus now on flaps, speed, altitude, and the plane will line up on the course that we chose, which is the 164. Keep an eye on that rose compass. Eventually, once the plane makes its turns, all those green lines will connect, and then hopefully the glide scope will capture soon. And then, yeah, when we're about 1,000 feet from 1,000 feet above the airport, we'll disconnect the autopilot and land it from there. As long as we don't run out of fuel. This is this is shitty. This is a shitty thing Aerofly did with this, and it's been like this for years. This is, I believe, the third or fourth year that they've had this plane out on the mobile version, and every year the fuel is a huge issue with this plane. Flaps 8 degrees. Landing gear down. On our display, you can see the green triangle is now moving closer to center, and now the glide scope has been captured. It's about that time. Time to put the iPad on my belly and recalibrate it. I have a bit of a belly, and when I put the iPad right up on it, it keeps it nice and stable, so when I disconnect the autopilot, the plane doesn't go wobbling everywhere. It stays nice and centered most of the time, as long as I don't breathe too hard. But if you got a little bit of a belly and an iPad or an Android tablet, just put it up on your belly and then recalibrate it, and you should be in for smooth sailing. Let's push the red button on the yoke to disconnect the autopilot, or you can disconnect the autopilot by pushing the AP button on the autopilot stack. But right now we are flying this bird in ourselves. If you noticed, the plane was pretty stable when I disconnected the autopilot. I blame that completely on my belly, as I stated earlier. So right now our speed is good. We're doing good with the glide scope. Everything is going as planned, and I think we're going to make a touchdown. I got a good feeling. I did a pretty good landing with this plane yesterday when we flew into Aspen, and kind of have to nosedive into that runway. But right now we're doing good. The yellow and the green on the HUD are pretty close to meeting, which means we're descending correctly, we're heading correctly, our wheels are almost on the ground, and I think we're going to get a touchdown. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Touchdown, 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 touchdown. Yes, sir! Touchdown. Touchdown. Thanks for stopping by today. I appreciate it. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you are a repeat aviation enthusiast friend and have seen other videos of mine, I certainly do appreciate it. Oh wow, thanks Aerofly. What a hell of a view this is. So if you're at this airport and you push the tower button, this is what you see. Anyways, before you leave, please click the subscribe button. Please click the thumbs up. Leave a like. Leave a comment, and please share this video. Until next time, when we fly the friendly skies together, this is your pilot and Captain Greg, signing off.
Plus 100. Minimum. Minimum. 100. 50, 40, 30, 20.